give it to you, but let me just check. It's there already, Ahmed. Check. Yep. All right. So let's go ahead and bring up the outline and take a look at what are the different things that we'll be taking a look at and knocking out today from the blueprint. So the plan today is to finish off. This part is done already. This part will be done. We have this pending, and this will be done. So the only thing that will be left over will be the Flex VPN part. We'll do that next week. All right. So the plan today is VPNs using certificates with the router as a CA server, IKE v2 VPNs using the legacy mechanism as well as the SVTI. First of all, before we get started, any questions about the VRF aware VPNs that we talked about yesterday? Specifically the VRF aware get VPN. Any specific questions that you have for that you took a look at, that you think that you are not comfortable with? Everybody good with that? You guys can hear me, right? All right, brilliant. So with that in mind, let's go get started with VPNs using certificates with router as a CA server. First thing that I want you guys to understand about what we're going to be doing with the CA server is whatever we're going to do is only going to pertain to phase one. If you guys remember, we had two tunnels. Phase one tunnel, which was done by a protocol known as Bootcamp, also now known as IKE version 1. And then you had a second tunnel. All right, the phase two tunnel. This was for the data encryption. This was for the key encryption. The key that will be used over here, the session key. Everybody okay with that? Do you guys understand that concept? Right? All right. What we're going to be doing over here is trying to focus on the key that we used for encryption of my first tunnel. Do you guys remember every tunnel that you had set up required a key, an encryption mechanism, and a hash mechanism? Both these tunnels required a key, encryption, and a hash. Well, for the second tunnel, the session key was derived and exchanged in phase one. The encryption and hash had to be specified in your transform set. Good? Clear. Now, what we're going to do with the certificate authority, the CA server, is work on this key to make this key a little bit more secure. So whatever we're going to talk about over here really pertains to phase 1. It does not affect the way phase 2 is done. Phase 2 is still done the exact same way. So that's the first thing that I want you guys to have in mind when you're taking a look at today's lecture. Everybody good with that? So when we talk about certificates, we're talking about phase 1 automatically. Good so far? Now that we have established that fact, the next thing I want to, this is PKI. Yeah, I'll get into PKI. Now that we have established the fact that we're going to be working on phase 1, the next thing to take a look at is phase 1 in terms of keying. If you guys remember, in phase 1, to set this tunnel up, I needed 3 parameters. What are those 3 parameters? The key, encryption, and a hash. How did I set up the key over here? Now that we've done enough IPsec tunnels using this key, what is this key called over here, the one that we've been using so far? The pre-shared key, the PSK. The purpose of the key is to provide the key for your encryption and to provide the key for your hash. It also is a way of validating the peer. So the key over here, the pre-shared key, provides 2 functionalities. Number 1, it is the key that is used for your encryption and your hash. It is also used for another factor, which is validation of your peer. What do I mean by validation of my peer? Is basically making sure I'm talking to a device that is a trusted device. Why? They're using the same key that I am. Okay, that's the purpose of the pre-shared key, to provide the keying mechanism for encryption and hash for phase 1, as well as the validation of I'm talking to the right guy. Everybody okay with that? This is done by that key that we've been using. Cisco 123 is the key for this particular address. This, although it is not that bad, but it's not the most secure way of doing it. Why? I'm using a static key that I'm presetting on both sides. And generally, I don't change the key. Although not over immediately, but over a period of time, if I don't change this pre-shared key ever, it will eventually collect a lot of data. And do you guys remember what happens if you use the same key for a lot of data? If you're using the same key to send a lot of data, which is not really data over here, it's sending the session key, it will take a while, but before it gets to that lot of data that I can crack the key, but it's still, the danger is there. The brute force attack, absolutely. You get my point? So to make it a little bit more secure, they have a different keying architecture over here called the public key infrastructure, PKI infrastructure. So rather than using a pre-shared key, I'm going to use a different type of keying mechanism called the PKI infrastructure, the public key infrastructure. So I'm going to be replacing the pre-shared key with the PKI key. And what is this PKI key exactly? Let's take a look at that. So our objective right now is to figure out the alternative to what? To your pre-shared key, what is the alternative over here? The alternative over here is your PKI. Now, what is PKI? PKI works on the premise of a key pair. All right? Using a mechanism called RSA, in which RSA generates a key pair. A pair always means 2. So in this pair, you have a public key and it has a corresponding private key, which is generated as a pair together. The purpose of this public key over here is to encrypt the data. All right. Whatever data is encrypted by this public key can only be decrypted by the corresponding private key. So the function of the private key over here is to decrypt the data. You guys okay with it so far? So what I'm going to do on, let's say, entity A and entity B, first thing that I'll do is I will use the RSA key mechanism to do what? To generate a public private key pair. It is generated as a pair together. So they go hand in hand. A will generate his key pair. B will generate his key pair. Good so far? So A will have a public private key, B will have a public private key. Everybody understand that so far? What's the job of the public key? Is to encrypt. What's the job of the private key? It is to decrypt. The private key cannot decrypt anything. It can only decrypt what was encrypted by using the corresponding public key. Clear? Give me the go ahead and I'll step on to the next thing. Now that I have a key pair, the next thing that I will do is I want to, let's say A wants to set up a tunnel to B to exchange the session key. What A will do is it'll say, please send me your public key. B obliges and sends what? Pub key B. A will take whatever information that it needs to encrypt and send it to B, encrypt it using what? Info. Encrypted using what key? The public key for B, and send it across. Who can decrypt this information? Who's the only one that can decrypt the information? The private key of B. Who keeps the private key of B? As the name suggests, private is private. It's only kept on B. So the only person that has the key to decrypt this information that was encrypted by the public key is the corresponding private key. The private key is kept private on B. So he does not give that to anybody. He keeps it local. He gives his public key, says, if you want to send me data, here, encrypted using that, I'll get it. I'll decrypt it using my private key. Now, once this one side is done, I need B to send data to whom? To A as well. So what does B do? Please send me your public key. A sends what? The public key A. B gets it. B takes the information that he needs to send across in terms of the session key, encrypts it using whose key? Pub A. Who decrypts it? The corresponding private key for A will decrypt it. Do you guys understand the flow over here? Very important to understand that. So Raza, your thing is pointing just to me, the question. So if you don't mind, just set it to everyone so everybody can see your questions and answers. So again, the purpose over here is to have a secure communication between the two entities, A and B. I have two keys, a public key and a private key. My public key, anything that is encrypted by using my public key, can only be decrypted by my private key. So when A wants to send data to B, information to B, he will request B to send him his public key. So once B sends A the public key for B, A will use the public key of B, encrypt the information so he can send it to B in a way that only B can read it. How do I make sure that? I encrypt the data using the public key of B, which can only be decrypted by the corresponding private key for B. So if A wants to send data to B, A will request B to send him his public key, encrypt the information with B's public key, send it to him, which will be decrypted by the private key for B. Similarly, when B wants to respond back, B will ask A for his public key, get the public key from A, encrypt the data using A's public key, and send it back to him. When the information goes back to A will use his private key to decrypt the data. So I'm using your key to encrypt data that I'm sending you. Make sense, Ahmed? Do they need to exchange the key for each session, or public key will be stored on each side? It will be done at the start of every session. But do you remember phase 1 stays up for 24 hours? So it'll be done once every 24 hours. Good so far? So you understand how the encryption is happening over here. Using this PKI infrastructure, the public key infrastructure, where the public key is used to encrypt the data, the corresponding private key is used to decrypt the data. Now coming back to the earlier thing about a pre-shared key. Do you guys remember I told you something about a pre-shared key? The pre-shared key is used for doing two things. What are the two things? Number one was used to be the key for encryption and hash, right? I've already shown you that PKI can do that. The only difference is I don't have a pre-shared key over here. I use the public-private key setup to do that. What I just went over right now. Good? Clear? What was the other thing that the pre-shared key was used for? If you guys remember, I said there were two things that the pre-shared key is used for. One was the encryption key and for hashing and encryption. The other one is validity. Abid, Rinchen, Tarek, all absolutely correct. Validation of the peer. Now in here, if you take a look at it, is there any validation done? In reality, nothing. If you take a look at it, A will ask B, give me your, please send your public key. He sends his public key. How does A know that that is really B over there? Maybe somebody is sitting in the middle and spoofing B's IP and giving the wrong key. Is there a possibility? Yes, there is a possibility that somebody is spoofing B's IP and giving him his public key, which is not really B's public key. I had no way of verifying that B's key is the right or the proper key. Whereas in PSK, I needed to know the password. I had to preset the password. Over here, there's no preset password. So I don't know if B is really B. And that's where the certificate authority comes in. Also known as the CA server. The function of the CA server is to have a way of validating an identity that B is really B. This is B's public key. That's basically what I'm doing. All right. How does it do that? It's an entity that both the sending and the receiving, both the parties A and B, trust. Let's say somebody comes up to you and he wants to identify himself as a certain person. How do I identify that person is the right person coming in and requesting information from you? What's the identity of the person? Can he give a small little card with his picture and his name on it and give it to you and say, okay, I am this person. I am Kuwar. Would you take that? If you're naive, maybe. But normally, how do I validate that the person is the right person? I take a certified, validated ID from that person. What is a certified valid ID from a person in real life? Maybe a driver's license, maybe a what do you call a passport, maybe a government issued ID. For different countries, it's different. All right. So that is a valid ID because it has been certified, it has been validated by an authority that everybody trusts. And in our case, the trusted authority is some government entity in real life. We'll get to the VeriSign and the technical part of it later on. But in real life, it's the government entities, right? Like the driver's license authority or the passport authority, those type of people. You trust them to say, hey, this person is the person he is because I've done the due diligence to figure out, to validate his identity. And how's that done? How's that ID created? Let's say it's your passport. How do I create my passport? Think about it. You take a picture, right? Along with the photo, you send your name information, your address, and some other validating documents like your birth certificate and those type of things. And you send that information in a packet to whom? To the government. Agreed? What do they do with that? They take that photograph, they take your name, address, and maybe do a police verification against your photo, your name and address, and say that, yeah, this person is the right person. This is Kuwar. And what do they do with your photo and your name and your address? They put it into a validated, let's say this is the passport, they put it into your passport, your information, your photograph, the one that you send them. They put it into a passport with your name, your address, your information, and stamp it and sign it and send it back to you. Now you have your passport that becomes your identity. Everybody understand that? You guys agree with that? So this is what's happening to identify you. Now you can take that passport to anyone and say, hey, I am Kuwar, and they would trust you. Right? Agree? Now, to do the same thing in the IT field, I need to find that identity that everybody trusts. Let's say I'm doing something within my own company and I want to validate or identify devices that are within my company, within my network. I can set up my own certificate authority and have everybody in my company registered to what? To this certificate authority, the CA server. But if I want to do business on the internet, like a bank does, I need to have what? A authority that is trusted by everyone. A public CA server that will be trusted by different people. And as Santosh put out earlier on, one such certificate authority that is trusted by everybody is VeriSign. Entrust is another one. All right, there's a bunch of different ones that you can go to, but VeriSign is one of the main ones. So this is your public certificate authority that is trusted by everybody. Let's say you want to do encryption, if you want to do tunneling, any type of PKI stuff on the internet, you go to VeriSign, you send your information. What is your information over here? What you're basically doing is you're validating your public key. So people can communicate to you knowing that you're the right person. So let's say you're abc.com and you want to do business on the internet. On the internet, what you would do is you would generate your public-private key. You would take your public key along with your information. And what would you do with that? You would send it to VeriSign, along with all the validating documents, like maybe a company certificate, maybe an incorporation certificate, maybe a trade license, whatever your documentation is required for your company validation. Once VeriSign validates it, he takes your public key, the same public key that you gave it, it puts it into a format known as the X.509 certificate format, puts your information on it, the same information that you provided, but then what does it do? It signs it digitally. It puts a digital signature on what? This small little ID. This ID is known as the identity certificate. And once this identity certificate has been signed by the public certificate authority, he will send it back to you with your public key, your information, and the CA's information in that certificate. Now you have your identity certificate, right? The other entity that also wants to do business on the internet will do the same. He will generate his public key with his information. Actually, right now it's not in a form of a certificate, and he will send that information to whom? To the CA server. The CA server will do the due diligence, figure out that this is the right person, takes the same information, puts it into the format of a certificate, signs it, and sends it to whom? Sends it back to him. So now both of them have their own what? ID certs. Everybody understand? Everybody following so far? And the only purpose, the only reason I'm doing this is to make sure I have a valid or validated certificate, validated public key from a certified CA server. Good so far? So the end result at this point, once I do my registration, is what? My end result over here is both A and B will have a certificate that will contain their public key, their info, CA info, and a signature by whom? The certificate authority. All right, same thing over here. Info, CA, and signature. The digital signature. All right, so now when A wants to set up the first tunnel to B, he will request for what? Please send your public key. What does B send across? The ID cert for B, this guy. Understood? A gets it. How does A know this is a valid certificate or not? Yes, it was signed by some CA server, but how do I know that is really that CA server? How do I know that's a trusted, that is the real signature for VeriSign? Ask the CA. Actually, what it does is it keeps the CA server also, by the way, has his own certificate, which is called the root certificate, which contains the CA server's public key, CA information, and it's self-signed by himself. This CA root certificate is downloaded and kept on where? On A. This is called the root certificate. or the CA certificate. When this public key from B, the ID cert from B comes in, it has a signature of the CA server. The signature of the CA server is done by using the CA's private key. The CA's private key is signing this certificate. But in order to validate that this is the CA server's signing it, this is the right signature for the CA server, the CA's public key verifies. And what this root certificate contains is the public key for the CA server. So using the public key of the CA server, I am going to verify the signature. Yes, this is the signature for this root certificate, which I trust. And if this is matching, that means this is a valid guy. This is B is the right guy. Do you understand that? So what do I use to validate it? I don't need to go over. I don't need to actually go to the CA server to validate it. I have the root certificate of the CA server downloaded. In the root certificate of the CA server, I have the public key. Okay? The public key of the root certificate is the one that verifies to tell me that this is the right signature or not. So when the ID cert came in with the signature of the CA server, I'm going to use his public key to verify that the signature is correct. If I can verify that the signature is correct, I know this is a valid certificate signed by this CA server that I trust. So this root certificate I download, I'm downloading it and trusting it. This is the trusted root certificate. So if I trust the root certificate, I trust the signature, and I trust the guy. Oscar, you good with that? So coming back, Rinchin and Gilbert, do you understand how the CA server validation takes place? So I don't need to go to the CA server. I have that root certificate downloaded. Now, let me ask you this, going back to the internet just for a bit, and then we'll come back to cannot be something, and you say, connect, I agree, and I'm okay with this. I'll get back to that, Ahmed, in a second. Let me finish this off. Have you seen that? Where you say continue and you move forward? Have you read the message, what it says? What the message actually says is, listen, this guy that you're going to is giving you a public key, but the public key I cannot verify. The reason I cannot verify is I don't have the root certificate of the CA server. So the guy that you're going to, the server that you're going to, has gotten a public key issued by a certificate server that you do not trust. What do I mean you don't trust? You don't have the CA server's certificate on your device as a trusted CA server. Because of that, I don't have the public key to verify the signature. What about the rest? You go to a whole bunch of different websites on the internet that are HTTPS and they're okay. I haven't downloaded any certificates for any CA server. How do I trust them? Because Microsoft's done that for you. Or your browser entity has done that for you. If you open up IE, you go into settings. One of the options is internet settings. By default, under content, you see certificates over here. Under certificates is a tab for trusted root certificates. These are all the different root certificates that have been trusted by your browser. This is done by Microsoft. So they have already downloaded and trusted these root certificates. So if you want to do business on the internet, you better get a certificate from one of these guys. Their public key is already on your device as a trusted certificate. And anytime you go to any of the websites that has gotten their certificate from one of these guys, it will trust that guy to be the right person. So if you're going to, let's say, a bank, bankabc.com or something, and the bank says I am abc.com, in there, because it's a bank, it's a financial transaction that's taking place, they will present their certificate to you, their identity certificate, which would have been signed by one of these guys. And your browser automatically verifies, oh yeah, this is the right person. Why? Because the certificate was signed by VeriSign or Entrust, and that certificate is validated over here. Does that make sense, guys? So if you're getting that message, that basically means that the certificate that is issued by a CA server who is not trusted by your browser. That might not be a bad thing, but it's just telling you that, hey, listen, this certificate that I have received from this, I don't have the CA server's certificate trusted by you. For example, let's say you go browse to an ASA firewall to manage the ASA firewall. When you go to browse to a firewall to try to manage it, it does have an HTTPS certificate issued by Cisco's CA server. But Cisco's CA server is not in your trusted list of root certificates. So it's coming back and telling you, hey, listen, you're browsing to this device, but this device is a certificate server. I don't have the root certificate as a trusted root certificate. Do you want to continue? And you say, I don't care about the risk because I know where I'm going. So click on continue, you go over there. So basically you're overriding it and saying, I trust this guy blindly because you know where you're going, right? But if you go on the internet and you're trying to do banking and you go and get this type of message, don't go there. Do you get my point? Everybody clear with that? You guys understand that? All right. In that case, let's go ahead and take a look at what are the steps that I need to do to set the CA server up, and how do I do certificate-based IPsec tunnels. Now, in order to do that, I first need to generate my public key. I need to get my public key validated by whom? By my CA server for my company, because I'm probably going to do a VPN between two sites belonging to the same company. So my CA server will be local. What is a CA server? In reality, it is just like any other server, like a DHCP server. It's a service that runs on a server box. Just like you have what? A DHCP server or a DNS server. You install it on a server. It's a software, which is the certificate authority software, CA server software. You have your devices, let's say your routers that are doing VPNs. You will generate your public key over here, public private key on your own box. Somebody was asking the sequence of events. So I'll generate my public private key over here. I'll generate my public private key over here. This is my CA server. The first thing that I will do is I'll download the CA server's root certificate so that I know I'm trusting this CA server. So that's the first thing after I generated my public private key. So once I have the root certificate that I'm trusting this guy, now what I'm going to do is I am going to now send what? Send my public key along with my information to him. But before I do that, I need to trust the CA server, and that's what I've done by downloading the root certificate over here. So I will send my public key to whom? To the CA server. This communication is done through web, HTTP or HTTPS. Okay. The CA server receives your request. What do you do with the CA server's request? Once you receive it, the CA server will validate your information, and once that is validated, he will send you the same information back. but in the form of a certificate. And what does that certificate contain? This is the identity certificate for you, which contains your same public key that you send it with your information, the CA information, and the CA's signature. And the same thing will happen this side. He will also get his ID cert, which will contain his public key, his info, the CA info, and a signature. Good so far? You guys okay with the 3 steps that I've done? What are the 3 steps? I've generated a public-private key on my device. I've gone to the CA server and downloaded the CA server's certificate called the root certificate. Keep it, trust it, send my public key to the CA server, and get a certificate downloaded from the CA server once the CA server has validated you. Let me write these steps for you guys. So the first thing, CA server based setup. I'm doing the initial setup. Step 1, configure your CA server. Make it into a CA server, whether it's a software or another device acting as a CA server. Generate the public/private key on the local device. In our case, it'll be a router. Download the root certificate from the CA server. Will the CA server store the public key from the clients? Yes, it will. It will store the certificate. And inside the certificate is the public key for the clients. Because the certificate is nothing more than the public key for the client, along with his information, the CA information, and the signature. So the CA server keeps track of all the certificates that it has issued out. You got it? All right, so downloaded the root certificate. Once I've downloaded the root certificate, what would I do? Send, which is also known as enroll, your public key with the CA server. Step 5, CA server validates your credentials and issues you an identity cert, which contains what? The public key, your public key, the entity's public key. What else does it contain? Information about the entity. Entity being, in our case, a router. CA information, who the CA server is, CA signature, digital signature of the CA server. This is what's contained within a certificate. All right. Once that is downloaded, once that's issued, it is the identity cert is sent back to the entity. All right. So now at this point, how many certificates do I have on my device? I have the root certificate for the CA server, and I have the identity certificate, my identity certificate. Everybody okay with that? You understand that? So I'll have my identity certificate and the root certificate. The other entity will have the same. So now coming back and doing the same thing over here, let's take a look at this real quick. So at the end of this procedure, what would I have? Entity A will have ID cert for A. Okay. And I'll have the root certificate for the CA server. What would B have? ID cert for B and the root certificate for the CA server. Now when the communication works, A sends a message to him, send public key. What does B send over here? ID cert for B, which has a signature based on the root certificate. So at this point, I'm going to use the root certificate to validate that this person is really B, because it's got the signature of the CA server. Okay, so root validates. Same type of procedure is done on the other side. So B sends send public key. ID cert for A is sent. Root validates. Remember that PSK is doing the validation and all that? This is your PKI validation done through the CA server. Now I have the public key, each other's public key with me. I can now start encrypting data to each other. Everybody okay with this? You guys got it? Any questions about this? Everybody okay with this? Understood? Okay, good. Now, let's do this over here. We're not going to do it on a CA server. Here, we're going to do the same thing, making our router into a CA server. You know, your router can act as a DHCP server. So each site has a root ID cert and a public key. Well, the public key is inside your ID cert. What does the ID cert look like? ID cert is your public key and your info, the CA info, and the CA signature. So your public key is over here inside your ID cert. So when somebody asks me for my public key, I'm going to send my ID cert, which contains my public key. Got it? Now, I'm going to make a router into a CA server. Okay. In order to do that, just like your router can act as a DNS server, it can act as a DHCP server, it can also act as a CA server. In real life, I would not do this. But on the exam, what Cisco does is they keep away from non-Cisco software packages. They don't expect you to know how a particular non-Cisco package works. So they focus on what? Cisco equipment for these type of things. So they want you to have the router act as a CA server. So what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to show you how to make a router into a CA server so it can grant these certificates to your devices. Okay, now router as a CA server. Another thing that you need to understand about the CA server is time, the importance of time. When I issue a passport or a driver's license, is it valid forever? A driver's license or a passport, is it valid forever? No, it has a validity on it, correct? It's valid for 1 year or 2 years or 5 years, whatever the validity is, right? So time plays a big factor in it, because the routers, when they boot up, if they're not actually synchronized with time, you're going to have issues with it, because when the CS server issues a certificate, generally depending on your certificate server, it'll be either a 1 year or 2 year or 15-year certificate. So if your times are not synced, it'll be an issue. For example, if the router was set without changing the time, depending on the type of router that you have, some of them have a initial time of 1993, some of them have 2000, some of them have 2002. So there are different times. Let's say I didn't change my router's time at all. So my router that's acting as a CS server has a time somewhere in 1993. He issues a certificate which is for 1 year, let's say. It is valid from 1993 to 1994 because I have not changed my time on it. This device over here and this device over here have the proper times. What's going to happen now? Well, when he gives the certificate to the other guy, says it's an invalid certificate, it's already expired. So before you do this practice, the first thing that you need to do is make sure the router's time is correct, the CS server's time is correct, and the other device's time is correct. It's synchronized. It doesn't have to be synchronized using NTP. You can do it manually. You can do it through NTP as long as the times are correct. It cannot be the wrong times. So that's the first thing that you need to make sure of because it has a validity on it. So first requirement, prereq is what? Time date. Oh, okay? Because if you don't do that, you will have an issue. Or for that matter, the other way around. Let's say I have set my date and time properly on the root certificate. It is 2017. And I forgot to set it over here. This one is set to what? 1993. So the validity of this one is from 2017 to 2018. Well, it'll take a bit for him to catch up. Agreed? So it's very important that you have your time synced up. How? Manually, using NTP, it is irrelevant as long as the times are correct. That's the first thing that you need to understand about it. The next thing, the enrollment process. Again, part of the prerequisite. When I go to enroll my certificate, what is the form of communication that I'm using? What am I using to send my public key to the router and the router responds back with my certificate? What is this communication happening based on? What protocol am I using to set this up? The protocol that I'm using to set this up is HTTP or HTTPS. So for this to work properly, the CS server needs to be set up as a web server, a prerequisite. So another prerequisite is that CS server should be a web server as well, because the request is sent as a web request to enroll my public key and get a certificate back. Good so far? Clear? Now, the last thing that I also want to talk about that will come up as I'm doing the config is a component known as the CRL, which is called a certificate revocation list. What is this? Let's say I get a certificate from the router, which is valid from 2017 to 2018. Let's say from July of 2017 to June of 2018. Is that valid right now? It is valid, right? We're in August of 2017, so it's a valid certificate. But what happens is this company goes out of business. Exactly, due to business needs, it's no more required, or the company changes, moves over to another company. A whole bunch of different things can happen, and they no longer need that request. So what they can do is they can tell the CS server, hey, listen, I don't need that certificate anymore. Please revoke it. When you say you get a certificate from the router, no, that's the ID cert. The root certificate is the first thing that I download. The root certificate is the first thing I download to trust the CA server. Once that's done, then I'll send my public key and I'll get the identity certificate issued to me. My identity, my passport, my license, whatever you want to call it. So when the router issues you your identity certificate, it has a validity time on it. So you have this certificate valid for you for 1 year, for example, or 2 years or 5 years, depending on how much you paid. Get that, Oscar? So, but after 2 months or 3 months or within that validity period, you no longer need that certificate because of different company reasons. So you can send a request to the CA server saying, hey, listen, you know, the certificate's still valid, but I don't need it anymore because I've merged, I have decommissioned that server, a whole bunch of different reasons. Main thing, I don't want it anymore. So at that point, what the CA server does, although the certificate is still valid, it puts that certificate on this list known as the CRL, Certificate Revocation List. Although the certificate is still within the validity period between 2017 July to 2018 June, but it has been revoked. Why? For different reasons. It has been revoked. Maybe the company wanted to do it. Maybe the company went out of business. Maybe it decommissioned the server. A whole bunch of different reasons for decommissioning or revoking the certificate. But they publish that CRL on their web server. You need to, on the client, specify, hey, listen, although the certificate is valid, please check the CRL to make sure it has not been revoked. That's called the CRL. On a normal CA server, it's very simple to do. On a router, it's not going to have that much room on your flash to do it. So generally on a router, when on your CRL checks, you tell the clients don't check the CRL because it's all done in-house when your router is acting as a CA server. All right. So in our case over here, when we do the CRL check, I'll say I don't want to check it because otherwise I need to have a proper CA server to do that. You guys understand that? Clear? Everybody okay? Ready to start doing it now? These are the things that you need to keep in mind, and all these things will come up as we go through the configuration now. Now the configuration becomes easier because you're understanding what you're actually doing in your configuration. CRL maintenance is done by the CA server, absolutely. All I'm going to do on the client side is specify the location of the CRL, whether I want to check it or not. And that pointer, that URL will be given to you by your CA server. All right, so how do I set my CA server up? I have a small topology. I haven't set it up. It's just there. I want to set this up over here in such a way that this guy over here is my CA server. I want to set router 2 as a CA server. My objective is to set up a IPsec tunnel from 10.1.1.0 to 10.3.3.0. So my tunnel should be from 10.1 to 10.3. All right, but I want to do it not based on PSK. I want to do it based on certificate. So the first thing I need to do is set up router 2 as a CA server, download the certificate and all that. But before I get to that, let's go ahead and set up my basic connectivity over here, routing so that everybody can talk to everybody. So that's what I'm going to do over here first. Let me close this because I've got too many routers. Start from scratch. So router 1, my first interface is connected towards R2. So 192, I'll say 168.12.1. Interface F0/1 is connected towards 13.1, which is 1 to 3. and I have a loopback which will simulate my internal network. And I want to run EHRP as my routing protocol, so everything is advertised and reachable. Router 2 is going to act as my CA server. (12.2). 192.168, and this is going to be 23.2 between 2 and 3. It also has 10.2 and run my routing. And router 3. (13.0), 23.0, and 10.0. So I should have full reachability on all the routers. Good. Now my first objective is to commission router 2 as a CA server. What are the different things that I need to do on router 2 to set it up as a CA server? So this is the flow, how it's done, the configuration part of it. CA server first. How do I set the CA server up? Step 1. Synchronize the times on the devices. Set your time in the clock time zone, and your, I'll say the clock time zone is DST or Gulf GST, Gulf Standard Time, +4. And I'll set my clock. Right now it is 5:18, which is 17:18:00. Today is the 27th of August 2017. And what I'll do is I will do this on all my 3 devices. So I'll go to router. And over here, show clock. Show clock. So as you guys can see, my times are set properly on all the different devices. Step 2, generate a PKI or RSA key pair for the CA server. This will be used for the root certificate. What's the purpose of the root certificate? To sign the identity certificates and also validate it. So the way you do that is crypto key generate RSA. Modulus is the size of your public private key, and give it a label, a name. I'll call it iOS CA. Just a name. That's the name of this certificate, that this key pair, the public key pair that I'm generating over here. So copy it. This is the public key and the private key for the CA server. This is the one that will be used for the root certificate, the identity, not the identity, the root certificate. So I'll go ahead and do this again on router 2, my CA server. So it's generating the key, and the name of the keys will be IOSCA. So I have the public private key that will be used for my root certificate right now. Again, in this case, because I'm using it for the root certificate, the function of the public key and the private key over here, the private key in this key pair that is getting generated, the private key in a root certificate is used for signing. So I will use, the CA server will use the private key to sign it, and I will use a corresponding public key for what? Validating the signature. So I will give everybody my public key so that they know what the valid signature looks like. So this will be made public to whom? Everyone, in the form of the root certificate. Everybody okay with this? So that's my second step. This was my second step over here. Step number 3, also very important. Configure your router as a web server. Why is that required, guys? Why do I need to create it as a web server? What if I don't? Come on. What if I don't configure it as a web server? What's going to happen? The clients will not be able to register their public keys with me because their communication is through HTTP, HTTPS. What I'll do is I'll skip it. I'll show you something that's important. Enrollment, not enhancement, enrollment type. I'm pretty sure that's what you meant. Right, Assam? All right. So I'm not going to do it. I want to show you something if you don't do it. Just remember, I haven't done it. And the last thing, configure the CS server parameters. Parameters like what? Remember, I told you that whenever I send a certificate out, it contains the CA info, who the CS server is. Like I am the CS server for, let's say, it's ABC company. CS server is my name. I'm located, let's say, in Dubai. My country is UAE for the CA server, and then maybe you might want to say the department over here is training. You use the X.509 format to specify that information. So how do I do that? Crypto PKI server, and you give it a name which matches the label of your root certificate. So that's where it knows which certificate to pick. You're going to specify where you want to store your certificates that you issue. Remember, somebody asked me a question, does the CS server keep track of what? The certificates it issues? Yes, it does. And you specify where do you want to store it. All right. The next thing is the CA server information. Issuer name, common name. Let's say ABC CA server. That's just a common name, like the name of the CA server. O for organization, ABC. Organization unit, like a department, let's say training. Then you can say locality, which is Dubai, and country, IN. This is just a format. Generally on the exam, they will give you this information. And at that point, all you got to do is no shut. That's how you create a CA server. Specify the location, specify the information that you want to put on the certificate server, and bring the server up. Good so far? Now, one of the things that you can do is if you don't want to go in and grant the certificate one at a time as a certificate comes in, you have the ability, optional, to say grant auto. What grant auto means is when a client comes in and requests a certificate, just give it to him automatically. If you're doing it in-house, this might be okay. But if you're doing it in real life, you want to take in the request, take a look at the serial number, make sure it's the right device, and then grant it. There's a special command to grant it. I'll show you that as well. But for right now, I'll say grant auto. And that's it. I'm done with my CA server. That's all I got to do. I've lectured for an hour to explain how it works, but if you really look at it, this is what you need to do to set up a CA server. Tough? 4 steps. Synchronize your clock, generate your public-private key pair for the CA server, enable the HTTP server, and set up your PKI parameters that you will be issuing on every certificate. So as I said, I'm not going to do the HTTP server because I want you guys to see something. I'll copy it, and I'll go to router 2 and paste it. As soon as I say no shut, it'll say, okay, give me a passphrase to encrypt your private key locally on my local device so nobody can access it. So it has encrypted my private key locally. Any passphrase is just to encrypt that private key locally. Now it's done. I'm done with it. But the thing is, normally speaking, the CA server will come back up and say, I'm enabled, I'm ready to go. No such message came in over here, did it? So although I've configured the PKI server, it is not ready to go yet. And why not? Because in order for it to be ready to go, it needs a prerequisite of a web server, and it is not running as a web server. As soon as I enable the web server, you'll notice it will come up. So it's very important that the web server is up. When I typed in IP HTTP server, what message popped in? Certificate server now enabled. You get my point. So it is a requirement that you have the HTTP server enabled. So this step is extremely important. If you don't do this, it's not going to be a CS server, valid CS server yet. It won't be up. Everybody good with this so far? Yes, understand? So your CS server has been set up. Now the next thing to do is get the clients. You don't want to do this on the router, Ahmed. I showed it to you. You do it on the exam. In reality, don't do it on a router. It is a free product that comes with Microsoft with the CS server. Just use a Microsoft CS server to do it. I don't know if it's a CS server. I don't think it gives you the CS server capability. The Microsoft CS server gives you that capability. Okay. So that's on the server side. So my CS server is set up. Okay. R1 and R2 now need to get their identity cert so that they can start doing encryption. Because at this point, they cannot do encryption. So they need to generate their PKI, public-private key pair. Once that's generated, they'll send their public key to whom? To this guy. He's going to automatically generate a certificate with their public key on it and send it back. Once they get that certificate, that identity certificate, they will now be able to communicate to each other. That is correct. That's the first step that you want to do in this whole process. When you start doing this, is download the certificate, the trusted certificate from Trust the CS Server certificate. Right now, they don't have it. They don't have any certificates right now. So what do I need to do on the clients? Client setup. Step 1 is the same. I've done this already, but I'll just put it anyways. Step 2 is the same. Generate a RSA key pair. This will be used for the ID cert. Now over here, I'm not the CS server, so I don't need to give it a label like that. I do need to define my domain name. It says cisco.com, or let's do abc.com. Because when I generate it like that without the label, it needs to have a host name and a domain name. So do that over here. Okay. Step 3, we'll do this part. So our certificate is generated. I'll do it on R1 and R3. What do I have at this point? Oops. This one is generated. I copy something bad. We'll find out. It's not, doesn't matter. Okay. So both R1 and R3 have their public and private key generated. Good so far? Number 3, create a pointer towards the CA server. Where is your CA server? You need to point to it. Crypto CA trust point. You can also say PKI trust point, it doesn't matter. URL http:// specify the IP address. I can just point to 10.2.2.2. And if you're using 80 or 443, you can specify it. You don't need to, it'll default to it. If you don't specify it, it's port 80. So basically what I'm saying is anytime I use this key or this tag called III, I'm pointing towards what? 10.2.2.2, which is router 2. Revocation check. Remember the CRL? None. Means I don't have a CRL because I didn't define any CRL on the CA server. So this is basically saying I'm not going to check the CRL. I'm just going to check the validity of the certificate. So I'm going to create the pointer on what? On my device. So my device knows where my CA server is. So I'll go to router 1, point to it, and router 3, point to it. Good so far? Now I'm ready to do the last two things. Last two things. One, I need to send my public key to whom? To the CA server. But before I can do that, I need to download his root certificate so I can trust it. So before I can send my key to him, I need to trust it. So the next step, download the root certificate from the CA server. Crypto CA authenticate. III basically says download your CA server certificate from where? III. III points to what? 10.2.2.2 port 80. So this is the command that actually downloads and trusts the root certificate of the CA server. Somebody asked me a question, Rinchan, you said R1, R3 doesn't have the root certificate yet. Now I'm downloading the root certificate. This is the command that downloads the root certificate and trusts it. Copy it. And they would have given you the CS server would have given you a password saying, hey, my root certificate will have this particular ID on it. Notice over here it says, this is my footprint. Do you accept this certificate? When you accept the certificate, you would have verified it against an email that would have given you the MD5 or the SHA-1 print, the fingerprint. And if that's the right password, I'll say, yes, I import the CS certificate, which is your trusted root certificate. And I'm going to do the same thing on what? R3. Now, at this point, I have my root certificate installed and trusted. On where? On my device. So router 1 and router 3 now have a root certificate installed. Everybody good with it so far? Yes, please. Everybody, come on. All right, good. Now the next thing over here is the last thing. Enroll your public key with the CS server and get a certificate issued. What type of certificate would this be? This would be the ID cert. The command for that, crypto CA enroll. I'm sending my public key over here to whom? III. III is just a pointer to 10222:80. Copy it. Let's do it on one first. When you do that, it'll ask you, hey, listen, I want you to give me a password. You want to write this password somewhere so that just in case you want to revoke your certificate, remember I told you that the company might go out of business and they want to revoke your certificate. The CS server will ask you for that password. So I'll say Cisco 123, Cisco 123. It says in your request, do you want to send the router a serial number? I'll say yes. IP address, nah, not really. Request a certificate from the CS server. At this point, I'm going to send the certificate to the CS server. This is sending it. And because I have grant auto, it will automatically generate and send me a certificate. And now I have a certificate. This is the ID certificate that I've got. And I need to do the same thing where? R3, enroll it. Give it a password to revocation if you want to revoke it in the future. The serial number, no IP address, and request a certificate. You could do the IP address as well if you want. I've sent it. Now I should receive it. So at this point, I have two certificates on router 1 and router 2. What do I have at this point? What are the two certificates? Router 1 and router 3. I have my root certificate for R2. And I have my own ID certificate for R1. What does he have? He also has the root certificate for R2, which is my CS server, plus he has the ID cert for himself, R3. Good. Now, R1 to R3, I want to set up a VPN to encrypt 10.1 to 10.3. From this point on, I do exactly what I have been doing. The only thing is I don't use a pre-shared key. Instead, I use certificates to do it. So now I'm ready to do my normal IPsec VPN. You might say, well, this is a lot of work to just replace your pre-shared key. That is true if you just had a point-to-point setup. It's a lot of work to just set it up based on that. It is more secure, but it's a lot more work. But if you had 20, 30 different devices that you're doing VPNs with, rather than having a pre-shared key with everybody to have a pre-shared key for doing the encryption and hashing for phase 1, or for that matter, of making sure that I am authenticating the other device, validating the other device, this is a much more scalable way of doing it, because once you do it, once you have a ID cert, you can go to anybody that is trusted by this root certificate. So in a larger scale, it's much easier, but on a smaller scale, it is a little bit more work. Now, do you guys remember how to do a normal IPsec LAN to LAN setup between 10.1 to 10.3? Let's do that. Help me out with that. You guys are experts at that by now. Sure you can. Show crypto, CA. They've changed the syntax and some of these to PKI certificate to CA certificates. So this is your certificate. This is your general purpose certificate. This is the issuer. This my key that was generated by. This my certificate that was generated by this particular CS server, ABC CS server. The name of my certificate is r3.abc.com. The validity is for 1 year. All right. This is the CA certificate that I have, which is basically for this guy, ABC CA server. This is a self-signed certificate. Got it, Deepti? Now let's do this. IPsec LAN to LAN VPN using certificates. Do you guys remember the steps? Rinchin was ready to go. What's the first step? Phase 1. Now in phase 1, crypto ISACAMP oh, sorry. Habit. RSA SIG, hash is MD5, encryption is triple des, and group is 2. What's the only difference that you guys saw over here? RSA SIG, right? Everything else is the same. Now, because I'm doing it based on the RSA SIGs, I don't need to create a pre-shared key because that's exactly what I replace. So I go directly to phase 2. From this point on, it's exactly the same. Number 4. Set peer is 192.168.13.3. Set transform set is, I think, ABC. Yeah, ABC. Step 5, apply to the interface, which in my case is F0/1. Do you guys remember these steps? The only thing that's different over here is phase 1. I didn't touch or do anything differently in steps 2, 3, 4, or 5. The only thing that I changed over here was what? Auth RSA SIG, and I don't have to have the pre-shared key anymore. So I can go safely to R1 and paste it. R3. Phase 1 is the same. I need to flip this part over here, 10.3 to 10.1, and this one changes to 13.1. Apply it to the interface, and I should be good to go. Show crypto, ICAMP SA, nothing there. Ping 10.1.1.1, source 10.3.3.3. Boom. That's my phase 1, and this is my phase 2. Everybody okay with this? Piece of cake. Once you know what you're doing, it's not that tough. Day 4, 27, and this is day 4. But before, yeah, let's just save it. I'll change that later on. So good. So if you look at this, this is the portion that I was just attacking right now. This one is done, done, done. Last time round, done, done, done the last time round. And today we just did this. Good. So coming back over here, this part is done. Now we get into Ike V2. But before that, break time. It's roughly 20 right now. Let's take it till 7:35, 15 minutes based on this particular clock. All right, when we come back, Ike V2. We'll use both the legacy mechanism as well as the SVTI mechanism. But before that, we'll understand what Ike V2 brings to the table. Questions, guys? Everybody good? Yes, please, and then you can take a break. All right, good. Excellent. So 15 minutes, I'll see you back and do Ike V2 then. Hello, hello. Everybody back? All right. So everybody good with the VPNs using certificates with router as a CA server? That is your advanced VPNs for right now. All of them. The 4 bullet points that you have over here, all of them are extremely important from the exam perspective. 1, 2, 3, 4, all of them are important. Can't we spoof the identity of R1 and put it in R3? The certificate that is issued for R1, right? The certificate has a public key. So the public key cannot be, you can spoof the IP address, but the public key will be wrong. All right, so now let's take a look at IKV2 now. IOSXR is similar, yeah. There's subtle differences like the CA will change to PKI, small things like that, but overall the syntax is the same. All right, so IKV2, what does IKV2 bring to the table? We'll take a look at things that are important from the perspective of actual configurations, what it brings to the table. There's certain things that it does under the hood, like efficiency, the way it actually handles less number of packets to actually set the thing up. But other than that, it's pretty much the stuff in terms of configuration and the stuff in terms of security that is added up. Okay, so we'll take a look at what IKV2 does, how is it better than IKV1, and then we'll take a look at the implementation using the legacy crypto map method as well as the SVTI. And that's what the plan is for today. All right, first of all, when we talk about IKV2, before we do that, let me just get rid of this, create some pictures for you guys so that you have this. Take a screenshot. So this is the CA server. Now I can stop it. I don't need it. And in the meantime, I'll start my IOU for my IKV2. All right, while it's starting, let's now go ahead and take a look at the capabilities of IKV2. First thing, again, you have 2 tunnels that we have talked about. Tunnel 1, tunnel 2. IKV2 is a replacement for ISACAMP, which was also called IKV1. So whatever we're going to do is only pertaining to what? This tunnel. Phase 2 still remains the same. So whatever changes that we're making are still only done for phase 1. Everybody okay with that? You guys understand what I'm trying to get to? With IKV2, I don't do any changes in phase 2. It's just changing IKV1 to IKV2. So all the different enhancements that we're talking about are all for phase 1. Good with that? What are these changes? What are the different things that IKE v2 brings to the table? The first one is scalability. Now, on a smaller network, you might think, again, it's a lot of work to do. I could have easily done it with V1, but in terms of scalability, it gives you additional capabilities. Let's take a look at that. What are the additional capabilities that IKE v2 brings to the table? Let's say I had router 1 communicate to multiple different entities, let's say A, B, C, and D. And you wanted to set up different type of VPNs. These are different companies that want to set up a VPN to your network. Every company has its own phase 1 policy, different phase 1 policy. Let's say this guy over here, A, mandates that you use triple DES, MD5, and 2. This one asks you to use triple DES, SHA, and 2. This guy over here says triple DES, SHA, and 5. This guy says AES, SHA, and 5. All right, if you take a look at it over here, every one of them requires a different type of phase 1 policy. So how many policies would you create on router 1 for this? Because each one is different, you would create a policy 10, 20, 30, and 40. Everybody agree with that? Yeah? Now, in IKE v2, you have a newer concept called the IKE v2 proposal. What the proposal allows you the ability to do is create a proposal in which you specify that my encryption is triple DES and AES. My hash actually in IKE v2 is called the integrity, is MD5 and SHA. And my group is 2 and 5. The proposal automatically creates policies for every possible combination over here. So it'll create a policy based on triple DES MD5 2, triple DES MD5 5. It creates an AES MD5 2, AES MD5 5, triple DES SHA 2, triple DES SHA 5, AES SHA 2, AES SHA 5. All the combinations are created. When you configure it, you just configure that I want encryption to be based on these two, and these two for integrity and group. You get my point? So it's a lot more scalable. But let's say you just had a simple site-to-site, it really doesn't matter then. Understood? So that's the first advantage, scalability. Let's write that down for you guys. Allows you scalability by using proposals, which automatically expand the different combinations of integrity, which is your hash, encryption, and group. That's your first advantage. Second advantage. When I was using pre-shared keys, I was using Cisco 123, for example, as a common key for phase 1. What that meant was data traveling from A to B is encrypted using Cisco 123, and B to A is also encrypted using the same key, common key. Agreed? In IPv2, it does maintain this capability. So if you want to do it like that, it's there. But in IPv2, you also have the ability to do directional pre-shared keys. What do I mean by that? I can use PSK1 from A to B, but I can use PSK2, a separate key, from B to A in phase one. So I can have a separate key encrypting data, which is the information session key, from A to B, and a different key from B to A. I don't have to use it, but I have the capability of doing it. So if you want to use it like the common key that you had, you do have the ability to do that, or you can do this. Allows you to use separate keys for each direction. Doesn't have to be like that, but it does give you the capability of doing that. That's the other advantage that you have. All right. More security by using more sophisticated, more secure algorithms. So I'm not limited to like group 1, group 2, group 5. I'm limited. I have the ability to do more than 1, 2, and 5. There's 10, 14, a whole bunch of more security in your session key, or for that matter for your encryption, or for that matter for your hashing, the integrity. In the older one, I had SHA-1, the basic SHA, and MD5. Over here, I have MD5 and SHA-1, but I also have the other ones, SHA-128, 384, 512, a whole bunch of other ones. So more secure algorithms are available to you in IPv2. For again, all for phase one. Okay, that's the other advantage that you gain over here. These are things that actually affect the actual configuration of things and also how it works internally. What it does under the hood, don't worry about it. You're not going to reprogram it, so it's not something that you should waste your time on. But overall, in terms of actual configurations and actual stuff that it brings to the table, these are the main ones. Now what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to bring up my topology that I can support different ones of these VPNs. Let me go to the security one. I'll just check this. Yeah, this is good enough. I'm going to launch these routers over here to show you different IPv2 implementations and the commands to do it as well. So this is my diagram. Let's take a snip of it. Save it. This is IPv2. Bring up Paint. My objective over here is going to be to set up one VPN between here. This one, I'm going to do it based on crypto maps, legacy, And let's do another one between 3 and 4. This one I will do based on SVTI. The command syntax is slightly different, so I want to show you guys both. All four. Ike V2 VPNs. Save it. That's my objective over here. All right. So let's set the topology up first. I need 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6. So 1, should bring all these guys up. Okay, so let's set up R6 based on this topology, E01. I'm going to set the IP address over here as 192.1.10.0. Set this guy as 192.1.20.0. .30.0. This one over here as 40.0. All right. So this is what my objective is. So 1 is here, 2 is here, 3 is here, 4 is there. Let's set it up on 6. Host R6. This is your service provider or the ISP network. 192.1.10.6. 20.6. 30.6. and 40.6. All right, router 1, interface E0/0, IP address is 10.1. Create a loopback that I'm going to use for routing to the VPN. .6 is my default gateway. Should be able to ping my default gateway at this point. Let's check if I can ping 10.1. Oops, wrong one. Done. Host R3, 30.3. 30.6 should be able to ping 10.1, 20.2, although I'm not going there, but still, just for reachability purposes. I do need to make sure I can reach 30.3. There you go. So my topology is set up over here. So I can do these two VPNs that I need to set up between 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So start configuring phase 1. So this is Ike v2 using crypto maps. That's my objective over here. Now, do you guys remember the steps that I need to set this up? What are the steps that I need? How many steps do I need to set up Ike v1 using crypto maps? Phase 1. Phase 2. ACL. Crypto map. And apply to interface. Now, at the offset, what did I tell you? The only thing that changes in Ike v2 is phase 1. I'm going away from ISACAM, which was Ike v1, to Ike v2. So these steps predominantly are the same. The only thing that changes is this guy. All right? And in that one step, phase 1 step, it is broken down into 4 sub-steps. So phase 1 over here will be broken down into 4 steps. So what I'm going to do for phase 1 is do phase 1A, 1B, 1C, and 1D. Then I'll do 2, 3, 4, and 5 normally. Everybody okay with that? Following along? And this part, I'm going to do it as part of the router, because there's certain things that I want you guys to take a look at in terms of the advancements that you have in the syntax by looking at question marks. So step 1A is configure a Ike v2 proposal, the one that will actually expand, create all the different combinations. So the way I do that is crypto Ike v2 proposal, and you give it a name, whatever you want to call it. Prop 1, for example. That's just a name. And I have 3 parameters over here. The 3 parameters being integrity, group, and encryption. But let's take a look at, let's do it on the command prompt itself, because I want you guys to see the options that you get. So the first one I'm going to do is between R1 and R2. So I'll say crypto Ike v2 proposal. As we agreed, prop 1. Now over here, I need to specify 3 things. What are the 3 things? Integrity, which is your hash, encryption, and your group. So the way you do that, let's do integrity first and see the differences. When I do a question mark over here with the hash, the integrity, you have MD5 SHA, which was the normal one, but you also have SHA 256, 384, and 512. So a lot more capabilities over here. So I'll say MD5 and SHA-1, for example. Let's say I want to do that, or SHA-256. So it will give me an option of using either MD5 or SHA-256. So it'll create all the policies automatically. Similarly, encryption. You have triple DES, you have AES 128, 192, 256, a whole bunch of different ones. All right? Or you have the old DES. I'm going to just use triple DES and AES, let's say 192. more sophisticated encryption that you have the capability doing over here. All right. The third thing, group. You had 1, 2, and 5. You do have 1, 2, and 5 over here. But along with that, you also have 14, 15, 16, 19, 21, 22, 21, 24. A whole bunch of more sophisticated algorithms. I'll just be simple with it, 2 and 5. So if you take a look at your step 1A, take a look. A lot more capability in terms of security that you get with this stuff. Okay with 1A? Now, what is it going to do over here? What are the different combinations that you get over here automatically? You get a combination triple DES, MD5, 2. You also get triple DES, MD5, 5. You get triple DES, SHA-256, 2, triple DES, SHA-256, 5. And you have the same 4 combinations based on what? AES, MD5, 2, AES, MD5, 5, and AES, SHA-256 and 2, AES, SHA-256 and 5. So you get all 8 combinations just by doing this. If you had to do this in IKE V1, first of all, you don't have so many advanced level combinations, but even if you did, you had to create 8 policies to accomplish this. You understand that? So in terms of scalability, it gives you a lot more scalability. Any questions on this, guys? But the thing is, the proposal cannot be called from your phase 2 or your crypto map. It always attaches to your policy. But the thing is, inside your policy, what you do is you would call your configure a policy and call the proposal. Crypto, RYPTO, IKE V2, policy, let's call it policy 1. The proposal, this is where you attach the proposal to it, top 1. There's nothing major over here, so I can just copy and paste it. Good so far? So at this point, I would have done the same thing with 8 different ISACAM policies. So again, if you have different type of setups, this really helps. Clear, you guys? Everybody okay with this? Yeses, please. Now that this part is done, let's move on to the key. In IKE V2, I had a single common key that was set up between the 2 devices. Over here, you have the ability to use that mechanism as well. I'll use it in the second one. I want to show you the new thing over here. But over here, I also have the ability to use asymmetrical keying in the sense that I'm going to use a different key from A to B and a different key from B to A. All right? It's done inside what is known as a crypto IKE V2 keyring. Let's call it KR1, keyring 1. Peer, what am I creating this for? This is just a name. You can call it whatever you want. R2, pre-shared key. Local. Local means my key to encrypt going from my side to the other side. So this is the key from 1 to 2. Cisco 1, 2, 3. And the key that will be used by the other guy to encrypt that I will use for decryption is Cisco 2, 2, 2. So pre-shared key local is me to him. Remote is him to me. So this is, for me, this is my decryption key. This is my encryption key. And it'll be reverse on the other side. But for whom? Peer R2 is just a name, locally significant. What really needs to set up over here is the address. So I'll say 20.2. So this is the pre-shared key, local and remote for 20.2. Good so far? Show run section crypto. If you take a look at it, this is your keyring concept. So step 3, I would say 1C over here, because it's still in step 1. Configure a IKE and IKE v2 keyring. That's how you do it. Any questions, guys, over here? I'll show you the way to do a common key as well in the second example. This is good? Yes? Any questions about this? Any specific things that you want to ask about the peer, the address, the pre-shared key, the local remote? All good? Understood? One D. Configure an IKE v2 profile that will attach the keyring to the authentication type. Just want to make sure. Reason for generating keyring is to have local and remote keys. Yeah, it gives you more flexibility because on the same command you could not do that. So keyring allows you the ability to do that in IKE v2. This will be attached to your crypto map. The IKE v2 profile will be attached to your crypto map. So the way you do that, crypto IKE v2 profile, let's call it IKE v2 profile 1, just a name, match identity, remote address 20.2, 255, 255, 255, 255. So this profile is for this particular address. Authentication, local is RSA, not RSA authentication is pre-shared. I could do RSA signatures if you want, and remote is also pre-shared. Over here, I also have the ability, if I want, this is another advantage, although most of the time you're not going to have this, that you can do pre-share one side, remote the RSA sig the other side. So one way is pre-share, the other one is RSA sig. You do have the capability of doing that, but the last thing over here, keyring, attach it, called KR1. Local means it's locally on the device itself. So whenever I use IKE v2 profile 1, it's going to use a keyring called KR1, which is this one. Let's put this over here as well. And this is basically IKE v2. These are the 4 sub-steps in the first phase that you have to set up IKE v2. Yes, you might say it's a lot of work, but again, if you look at it from a perspective of scalability, I saved myself a lot of configuration by putting those proposals over there. But not only that, I also get the capability of doing the different keys from A to B and B to A, the asymmetrical key. From this point on, step 2 and onwards is basically the same. Phase 2, crypto IPsec transform set, ABC, ESP, whatever you want to use, triple des, ESP, let's say MD5, HMAC. Step 3, ACL. I'm doing it from R1 to R2. My crypto map, there's a slight difference in the crypto map, and I'll show you that. So when I do the crypto map over here, I still say IPsec ISACamp. I still say match address 101, set peer is 20.2, the transform set is, what did I call it, ABC. But now, by looking at this so far, there's no indication that I'm doing IKV2. That's where I need to call the IKV2 profile, which I called IKV2 prof1. So this is where it ties it up to IKV2 rather than doing normal IKV1, which is ISACamp. This is what makes it call IKV2 the profile. That's the difference in the crypto map. And the last step is to apply it, just like normal. All right, phase 2, step 2, step 3, step 4, and 5 are predominantly the same. So let's go ahead and do that over here. Everything looks good. Looks good. All right, so with this done, I can just copy the whole config, including phase 1 for router 2. So over here in phase 1, step 1A, 1B is exactly the same. C, you're going to change it to R1. So you're going to point this to be 10.1. What used to be local on R1 now is remote over here on R2. What used to be remote now becomes local over here. So I flip it. For step 1D, you change the IP to 10.1, point it towards R1. This remains the same. ACL will flip. Crypto map, I'll change the IP. This remains the same, applying is the same. So by doing this, I would have knocked out my IKV2 using crypto maps. Good. Now if I do ping 10.1.1.1 from 10.2.2.2, should set up the VPN. The show command, show crypto IKV2 SA, shows you that it used your AES as the encryption, SHA-256, group 5. And my authentication is PSK, the pre-shared key for right now. Everybody okay with this? Yes, please. So I'll do the last one for the night, which is the SVTI. Go ahead, give me the, if you have any questions about that, ask me. Is IKV2 recommended over IKV1? Absolutely yes. It would be the same thing. If I had to set up a CS server, it would basically be the same thing. The only difference is I would have to specify your, what do you call it, authentication as RSA-SIG. Same concept though. Nothing changes over here. This is done. Yep, UDP 500. You can check that as well. Show crypto IPsec SA. And the 4 packets encrypted, decrypted. Phase 2 is identical. Now the same thing I want to do for connecting R3 to R4, but I don't want to do crypto maps. I want to do an SVTI. Subtle difference in there, so I want you guys to see that. So this is IKE v2 using SVTI. So again, I'm going to do it on R3 and R4. R3, let's just do it manually. 1A, the IKE v2 proposal, crypto IKE v2 proposal, prop 1, integrity, I'll say is MD5, SHA-1, encryption, just use triple des, and group will use 2 and 5. 1B, IKE v2 policy, crypto IKE v2 policy Paul_Paul-1, and that is just going to call the proposal prop 1. Now for C, which is the IKE v2 keyring, I showed you how to do it based on different keys. In this example, I'm going to show you how to do it based on a single key, common key. KR1, peer is R4, address is 40.4, and my pre-shared key. In the previous example, if you guys remember, I had done it based on local and remote. Here, it's going to do Cisco 123. So when you do it just like that, it basically means it's a pre-shared key that is common for local and remote. And 1D, IKE v2 profile, crypto IKE v2 profile, IKE v2 prop 1, identity, remote address is 40.4, authentication, local is pre-share, authentication remote is also pre-share, keyring, local KR1, and I'm done with phase 1. Now this is SVTI, so I'm not going to do your ACL. I'm going to do a profile, a transform set, and a profile. So let me show you the differences over here. First, let's copy this to R3, going towards R4. Let me make sure everything's good. Looks good. Now, for SVTI, just as a recap, step 2 would be phase 2. So that is crypto, IPsec, transform-set ABC, ESP triple des, ESP MD5 HMAC. Step 3 would be your IPsec profile. This is where a subtle difference comes in. I don't have a crypto map with SVTI, so I call my IKE v2 profile right under my IPsec profile. So the way I do that is crypto IPsec profile, whatever you want to call it, iprof set transform dash set, I call it ABC, and my set IKE v2 dash profile, which is going to be this guy over here. So I don't do that inside your crypto map because I don't have a crypto map with this type of setup. And number 4, tunnel interface, the SVTI. So I'll say interface tunnel 1, IP address 192.168.1.1, tunnel source 192.30.3, tunnel destination 40.4, tunnel mode IPsec IPv4, and tunnel protection. Hi prof. The last, run the routing protocol. I'm going to run EIGRP, quick to come up, 192.168.1.0, and I have the 10 network. Let's do this as 1.3 because I'm on router 3. I'm going to put that as router 4. So I've done this part, phase 2, all the way to routing. Tunnel will stay down until the other side comes up. And to do that, I'll just copy this. Okay, check 4 now. This is okay, this is okay. My peer on R4 will be 3, which is 30.3, common key. My identity will be 30.3, the remote identity. This remains the same. This is okay, profile is okay. Tunnel interface, I'm going to call it 192.168.1.4, and this will flip 40.4 to 30.3. The rest remains the same. Routing protocol is the same. Let's go to 4. And paste it. Boom. My neighbor relationship is up, so that means my IP2 SA is up. Show crypto IPsec SA should be encrypting. All right. Any questions, guys? You guys okay with this? Oh, why did that happen? Clear crypto SA. There you go, it came up. Sometimes one side has come up, so it does that. All right. So this is your IP2 both ways. We did legacy crypto maps and SVTI. Both are taken care of. Save this. Let's go back over here, and this is what we've done. IP2 will form the foundation for FlexVPN, but that we'll do next week. So at this point, we are done with this portion. Next, we'll finish up FlexVPN next weekend and get into firewalls. Any questions, guys? Let me send you the files. Save this over here. Okay. All right, no problems. Let's go over here and I'll open up my email list. Everybody should be there from yesterday. Day 4. Security, day 4. I did the CA server and IQ2. And you wanted the outline. Santosh. See if you're there. If not, I'll add it. Missing, how come, man? What's up with that? Okay, I've saved that for right now. And we will also fix it over here. Good. So I have this. Yep, couple of people. Remember that advanced security, advanced services class for Cisco I did? A couple of people passed from there. All right, guys. So next weekend, same time, we will try to knock out VPNs completely on the routers. I shall see you guys next week then. Have a good week. Thank you, Oscar. Thanks, guys. Take care now. See you on Saturday. Bye.